Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what time of day it is that you're going to be listening to this, but today is Monday, December 2nd, and we are in countdown mode to Christmas shopping and all the craziness that goes along with it. Want to just thank you for checking in and letting me be a part of your Christmas season. I did give an infomercial last night, kind of telling you a little bit about what's ahead of me. This past year, I released the book Resilient. It's come out in a leader's form now. Both of those are up on Amazon and can be found. And then The Kite, the children's story, was released just a couple weeks ago now, and it too is available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon as well. And I'm already getting wonderful feedback on that, which is really, really an awesome thing. But last night I did share with you that I'm seeing for 2025, if I am to continue to do this and develop this expression of my voice being out in culture, it comes with a financial implication. And so if you would consider a year-end gift to me, and I'm not a 501(c), although I'm going to be having that conversation with my CPA and my lawyer to find out what exactly I need to do. But if you would consider making a year-end donation to Bill Loeffler, and you could mail that to me at my house at 11936 McGee Road, and that's Appleton, Tennessee, 37302. And somebody already contacted me this morning and asked if I had a Venmo account, and I do. And so they wanted to make their donation through Venmo, and I can make that possible as well. But what I know is coming up ahead in 2025 is that I need to upgrade my computer. I need to create a website. I'm aware of both of those rather large ticket items. I'm also there's going to be a follow-up to The Kite, and the playground is going to be due out in February. I'm told it's in the pre-production stage right now. I've already written that, and the artwork, the illustrations have already been completed. So all of that is done. And then I'm about halfway through a follow-up to Resilient. And the title of that book is It's Your Move, Turning Obstacles into Opportunities. And it's a study in the life of Gideon. So I'm kind of a busy guy. There's no kind of about it. But in order for me to accomplish these things, Chris and I have underwritten everything up to this point, the publication and everything that's tied in with that behind the scenes. But I'm wanting to ask if people, not at the expense of your own benevolent giving to other causes, but whatever amount is on your heart, we would really appreciate that. And I would thank you very, very, very much. Well, last week I kind of opened the door, no pun intended, to these first 4 Mondays in December, and I mentioned that I wanted to spend time on the text, a solitary verse, John 3:16, and it's now what I am coining. It's a phrase that I've come up with, and I'm calling it the Christmas compass. And if you are trying to navigate yourself out of a wilderness experience, and if you had a compass, but if you did not have all 4 points on that compass, the reality is that you would probably get lost. And the thing that I'm wanting to communicate here is that in my Christmas compass, I do have 4 major points, and I'm going to eventually get to my first one towards the end of our time together. But before I do that, I have 3 introductory ideas that I really want to bring to your attention. And this is kind of a redo from last week. This first idea that I want to mention to you has to do with personal anxiety. A second idea is misplaced priorities. And thirdly, the ability to create. And I just want to talk about each one of these very briefly, and because these things help me set the stage for my first compass point. So what do I want to say about personal anxiety? Well, first of all, we all have it. This past Sunday, our own pastor talked about this openly in his own message, where he said that in the Christmas season, there is a built-in anxiety factor, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. The second thing is that when we have anxiety, particularly unprocessed, untalked about, not reflected on, what that creates is a greater difficulty to be able to know how to prioritize our lives in a healthy way. The anxiety, the unprocessed anxiety, in every sense, clogs up our ability to healthfully prioritize. And then thirdly, any combination of these ideas, unprocessed anxiety and a confusion over on who's on first, what am I to do first? When these things are operative in our lives, it makes it very, very difficult to live creatively. And this third idea, living creatively, is a big deal to me, and I'm going to say some things about this. It's a fun thing for me to talk about, but it's also a very challenging and serious thing for me to talk about. So let's look at this first one, personal anxiety. How does that tie in with the Christmas compass? Well, last Monday I read from Philippians 4 to you, where Paul wrote, "Do not be anxious, but in prayer with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God." Now, anxiousness and its ugly cousin, if you will, fear, are mentioned over 300 times in Scripture. Hard to imagine, and you might be able to guess that a majority of those times are found in the Psalms. The Psalms are laced with references to worry, if you will. And to me, the Christmas season may be one of the most anxiety-producing seasons in a person's life, or certainly or in a family's life, and there's reasons for that. And let me just share with you why is it that the Christmas season is anxiety-producing. Our pastor did not go into any detail on this, but I, in preparation for our time together, I've thought about that. Well, when you think about the Christmas season, you think about the exchanging of gifts, and the very hard reality is that many people have more month than money. That is to say, at the end of the month, and Christmas is towards the end of the month, there may be not too much money left to go to. I think a second reason that there's anxiety, particularly during this Christmas season, is that a friend or perhaps a loved one has either moved or died. And I've talked openly about this in recent writings on Facebook, and this issue of loss and losing a dear friend, two dear friends, was not easy for me. And so I'm very aware that there's empty chairs at people's tables. And I mean, you cannot help but just know that these families, these individuals, myself included, are very mindful of that empty chair. I think a third reason for anxiety is that some people know that they're needing to make an appearance at a family gathering that has somebody present, and you not exactly have the, how do I say this gently? You may have a family member that causes you problems, and certainly you know that you need to make an appearance. It's a family gathering, but the reality is there's angst in you. I read something the other day that made me chuckle, and my wife tells me that I laughed at the wrong things, but this was the little anecdote, and it said that some of us need to adopt the philosophy of Santa Claus, where we visit some people just one time a year. So excuse me for my snarkiness, but hey, let me mention one other thing that's on my radar screen here, and that is that for our family, we are watching and waiting for Kelly, our youngest daughter, to have our first granddaughter, Miss Vivian June. And that type of anxiousness or anxiety, that comes from a very positive thing. We're excited about this. In fact, my own wife, I said, gosh, Kelly is so big now. And she says, I wouldn't be surprised if she had it this calendar year. And I said, you mean a baby for Christmas? And she just kind of looked at me and smiled, but that's Mama talking. Well, the second main idea that I wanted to bring to the table here regarding or ramp up to my first compass point that ties in with anxiety is the reality that people have a hard time correctly prioritizing things in their life. Now, I don't know if you have Bibles around or if you're driving. Certainly, this is not available, but I would alert you to Matthew chapter 6, and specifically verses 19 through 34. And it's so interesting to me that Jesus speaks very clearly to anxiety and misplaced priorities. In Matthew 6, verses 19 through 24, Jesus is very practical. He acknowledges that people have deep needs, and he identifies money, and he identifies our work or the jobs that we have, and it's right there. So it is those things that create anxiety. But Jesus goes on in verses 25 through 32, and he talks about just everyday needs. So we know that Jesus has talked about money. We know that he's talked about jobs, but he also specifically talks about eating and what we wear. And he makes that reference to, even the birds have a place to call home. And so he recognizes that. And then perhaps a very famous verse that maybe is a life verse for some of you, and it's Matthew 6:33. And this has to do with the fact that having correct priorities reduces anxiety. Jesus says, seek first, there's your priority word, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things, your job, your work, where you're going to live, the food that you're going to eat, the clothes that you're going to wear, the finances that come into your home. He said, if you prioritize with God's values first, all of those things are going to line up. And then he closes out that chapter. And for those of you who have spent time studying the scriptures, you know that when the Bible was put together, we did not have chapters, we did not have verses, but the way that the creators of the manuscript concluded chapter 6, Matthew chapter 6, is that Jesus says that anxiety can be further reduced by focusing on today and not tomorrow. he says, tomorrow's going to have enough worries of its own. So kiss it off. I mean, don't be thinking about tomorrow. Be focused on today. Well, I'm almost to my first Christmas compass point, but please be patient with me. The Apostle Paul was writing to a region that had several churches in it. These churches were in Galatia, and Galatia is modern Turkey today. And Paul wrote these words, "In the fullness of time, God sent his son." That's Galatians 4:4. That's an Advent verse. That's a Christmas verse. In the fullness of time, God sent forth the Son. This was the promised Messiah in every sense of the word. And I'm wanting you to focus just on one word here, and that one word is fullness. Fullness. In the fullness of time. What Paul is saying is at just the right time, a perfect time, a predetermined time, a time in history that was filled with all types of activity. God put into play a most significant and unplanned event, and that's the birth of Jesus. I'm going to use this phrase here, and I don't think it's disrespectful, but this was a spiritual, cosmic, perfect storm where all things came together. I was teaching on perfect storm one time in a class and was trying, in my own layman's language, trying to explain a perfect storm, and that's when all the elements together all line up and it creates a very chaotic disturbance. Well, when I came to the end of my struggle to explain perfect storm, I had a student raise their hand and they said, "Dr. Effler, you really did explain that pretty well, but my dad is the head meteorologist," and then he named the city where he's out of, "and this guy is on television even as we speak today." He said, "This is how my dad would explain a perfect storm." And all of a sudden, the teacher, I sat down and I let that student go off, if you will, and he did a wonderful job in describing how all things line up to create real chaos. Well, the fullness of time. What do I want to say about that? And that is that when our lives are so filled up with stuff, and the ancient world was filled, again, with all types of activity, when our lives are filled with all types of stuff, we have very little wiggle room. We have very, very little margin, if you will. In planning our family season gathering activities, I thought, wouldn't it be great to have just a simple night where we're not all making a bunch of food, but let's just have a cookie exchange night. Let's make things really simple. And people thought, God, that sounds like a fun idea. But the more that I thought about that, the more I thought, here I am, I'm cutting in on everybody's margin. And so I sent out a group text, and I think everybody who's listening to me knows what a group text is. And I said, I think I misspoke, and I'm thinking about Kelly and being pregnant and the baby being born relatively soon. And maybe this is not the year to do this. But the family jumped back in and they said, "This was your idea, Bill. We think it's a good idea." And even my daughter said, "Dad, I'm really going to be okay. Let's do the cookie exchange." So in the fullness of time, again, what I've said is that when we have anxiety cuts into our ability to prioritize carefully. And when that happens, our lives are filled up with stuff. And so I want to pause now and ask you a question. What is your life filled up with? What are you full of? This is the Monday after Thanksgiving before everything gets uber crazy. And my question to you this morning or this afternoon or or in the evening time when you're listening to this, my question is there anything that you need to do to lighten the mental or emotional or relational load in your life? I want to ask that question, but a little differently, and I want you to listen with your heart, because your heart will talk to you. And if you and your spouse are listening to this together, and I've sent out, numerous emails to married folks that I have a connection with, and I said, hey, consider joining me for the Christmas Compass on Mondays, and so I said, I want to rewrite that question, and this is the way that I've rewritten it. And your spouse clearly would have answers for this, but here's the way that I rewrote it. Is there anything that I have been putting off, something on a to-do list that has been there far too long, a person that I need to speak with? Is there anything that I need to begin to address that can make room for a less stressed Christmas? We haven't gotten even to my first point yet on the Christmas Compass. What I'm trying to make a case for here is that I'm wanting you to lighten your load so you can receive that which I'm about to say. Now, the Christmas Compass is based upon John 3:16, and I mentioned that last week in an introductory time, and you can find that on my Facebook page. But listen to John 3:16 in the Passion Translation. Here is the way God loved the world. He gave his only unique Son as a gift. Everyone who believes in him will never die, but experience everlasting life. There are 4 compass points in that one verse. And here is the third idea that I wanted to bring to your attention before I mention that third compass point. Now, I've talked about the reality of anxiety, and I've talked about misplaced priorities, but this third idea that really allows me to fully talk about my first compass point is your ability to create. The ability to create plays a huge role in establishing deeper expressions of love with those around us. The very first thing that we know about the character of God is not love. The very first thing that we know about God, and for some of you even struggle with the idea about even the existence of God, and I can understand that. But in Genesis 1:1, the Hebrew scriptures tell us, in the beginning, God created. God is about creating things, beginning with you. Paul tells us that when anybody chooses God, they become a new creature, a new creation. The old life passes away. I heard said long ago, do not allow someone to remind you of your past that God has long ago forgotten. And for me, a person with a victory story over a daunting challenge is far more attractive to be in a relationship with than somebody who comes to me with a fact. And so here's a hard teaching point for you. If a person does not have room for creativity, so there's anxiety in their life, there's misplaced priorities. If they do not have room for creativity in their life, the decision to love, and there's the very first point of our Christmas compass, the decision to love, particularly in the challenging times, is near impossible. Creativity comes before love in the dictionary, and creativity comes before love in relationships as well. For those of us who have been married for many years, and this month, Chris and I will celebrate 44 years together. And I want to tell you that there's been times when we've needed to recreate our marriage. After leaving the teaching career for 22 years and transitioning into nearly a full-time writing and speaking schedule, I want to tell you that I haven't landed yet. I have anxiety in my life. There are days that I struggle to know, what I am to do first. Chris's question to me, much like the woman in the Song of Solomon in the very first chapter, this woman in Song of Solomon chapter 1 is very, very bright. She has an opening question. Where are you going today with your flocks? It's a huge question. And a feeling lurking beneath our lives when considering creativity and establishing love in a deeper way. You've got to know that, is this direction, is this decision, is this desire to connect with others around us in a deeper way, are your motives pure? Are they trustworthy? Now, a writer that is very much new at least to me, on the Christian writing scene in the behavioral way is Lisa Turquist, and she's written a very hard book. It has a very difficult title. It's I Want to Trust You, but I Don't. And in this book, she describes her own journey of trust and her own way that she has moved from mistrust and fear to re-engaging and reconnecting relationally. She's been through the valley, but now she's out of that valley. The decision to trust another may be one of the biggest decisions a person can ever make. Long before we come to that John 3:16 first compass point, here is how we know what love is. Long before we come to that northernmost compass point, we have got to deal with the issue of, do we trust that person, this decision? Chris is asking those questions as we're trying to part and parcel out these next chapters in our life. And so I just want to read to you two snippets, two sound bites that Lisa has written in her book. And if you're driving, there's a side of me that wants to say, you need to pull over now. But this is what she's written. First one is very brief. Second one is a little bit longer. First sound bite that Lisa Turquist writes is, your smile is like the sunset. One look at you and my walls go down. I don't know what you do with that. For those who struggle with risking in relationship, the idea of walls going down and windows being put into place where there were once doors are huge. I'll read that one more time. Your smile is like the sunset. One look at you and my walls go down. Here's the second soundbite. Our love, like the sky, has changed from orange to 100 shades of pink to a dark navy blue. And here I am still loving you. What that ballad shares is the reality is that love has seasons. Love has an ebb and flow. And we need to recognize the coloration of love that we have in our relationships. I want to come back in closing here to John 3:16, Passion Translation. Here is the way that God loved the world, that he gave his only unique Son as a gift, and everyone who believes in him will never die, but experience everlasting life. The first point of the Christmas compass is love. To love, even in the best of times, is anxiety producing. I said earlier that I think of becoming a poppy for the first time often. For me to be a successful poppy, a grandfather, I'm going to have to learn to love fully and differently. I will need to have new priorities in my life in order to connect with Vivian June. In your gut, you know what you need to do to love again. In your gut, you know what you need to stop doing. And finally, a Christmas love involves a creativity, a new and different way of approaching life. And yes, some of you have already made that decision, which is an awesome thing. But to be able to love purely and deeply, to have an anxiety-free life where priorities are clearly set in place, where you have a ready ability to create, it's an awesome thing. The Christmas compass, the northernmost point, is love. Hey, thank you for being with me on this December 2nd. It's our first Monday together. I hope this has been helpful for you, and we'll see you next Monday.